And welcome back to CentralCoastRadio.com, where we have got a very, very special guest on the show right now. This is a man that I've had the joy of meeting a few times over the years, and I've got to say, every time I meet him, I come away from those meetings more and more inspired. So, welcome to the program, Nick Barkla.
Thank you, mate, and thank you for a very generous introduction.
No worries. Now, Nick, you're on today. We're chat to you about your brand new documentary called The Healing, which has been out and about now, doing some screenings out in the community, but also about to get released on streaming platforms as well. So, for those that don't know about The Healing, tell us a little bit about this amazing documentary.
Look, the Healing is about a new equine welfare program run by a guy called Scott Brodie in New South Wales, up there in the Southern Highlands, Kangaroo Valley. And what he's done is he's brought together traumatised ex-racehorses and traumatised military veterans and first responders, and he's getting them to work together to help heal each other. So it's a very unique program and a very, very successful one. So I followed the journey of 4 military veterans and a couple of horses, and also Scott, over a 3.5-4 year period, where they continually work together, I guess, to give both second careers and second chances at life.
So, Nick, tell us a little bit about where you first learnt about this program, and when did you feel that, hey, this might actually make a really good documentary, I need to get this story out there?
I heard about it. A mate of mine in June 2016, had written an article about Scott and the work he was doing with the horses and the veterans. And he was telling me about it, and he went out and he watched a bit of Scott work, and he thought it was really fascinating. And he said, look, I think this guy is onto something quite important here, because these two groups, the military veterans and also the ex-racehorses, in some ways come from similar institutions. You know, they're highly regimented, and they're trained to do the same kind of set of tasks over and over. And then when their careers are over, they're often discarded and end up in really, often bad situations. So he kind of put me onto the story, and then he said, look, Scott's actually after someone to film some footage of what he's doing, because he's is self-funding the course himself, and ideally he'd like to get some funders on board or some sponsorship, and would I be interested in filming a couple of days of what they were doing to cut some footage together for him? Because he would pitch the idea to people, and they would say to him, that sounds really great, but do you have anything to show me? Which he didn't. So I spoke to him on the phone, and I could hear the guy's passion on the phone about what he was doing. And I just became really interested in being involved. And so he said, look, I've got a 5-day course starting in 2 weeks in Kangaroo Valley. If you can get up here from Melbourne with a crew, you could start filming. And so that's what we did. My friend Matthew Chung, fantastic cinematographer, got together a really great crew, and we went up there and we started filming. And then, honestly, it was after a couple of days of filming, it was really evident that the veterans were getting a hell of a lot out of the work that they were doing with Scott. When I met them, they were very anxious, they were depressed, they weren't socializing with each other, they really didn't have much confidence being around the horses. And after a couple of days of working with Scott and getting some very basic horsemanship lessons in how to help retrain these thoroughbreds, their behaviour, their body language really started to change. And it was after a couple of days I was just really impressed, and I thought, oh look, there might be something really worth following here. And then after we stayed on, we actually did more than 2 days filming. We filmed that whole that whole 5-day course. And then I said to Scott, what happens now? Like, where do the veterans, they've obviously really gotten something great out of this program, and they really seem to have come a long way in 5 days with their mental health. What happens now? And he said, well, I encourage them to keep volunteering with my program if they want to, and I'll teach them more horsemanship skills, and then they can help more horses. And then I thought that was a great idea. So I became very interested in which of the veterans, if any, would continue with Scott and his program. And then, as you see in the movie, 3 of the 4 that I focused on in that 5-day program, 3 of those 4 kept working with him for years. So so the film kept going for years, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nick, hearing the veterans talk at the start of this film when you first meet them, their stories are absolutely heartbreaking. Like, I know people who have actually seen this documentary who have cried. Was it difficult to convince them to be part of the documentary, or were they quite open to share their story in the hope that it might help others?
I mean, it's a good question, and probably the answer is a bit of both.
Yeah.
Initially, when I think I'd been there for 3 days on the 5-day course, and I'd shot some really beautiful interactions with them and the horses. But I said, look, for an audience to really understand where you guys have come from and why you're here, they need to get a sense of the trauma that you've been through. And, you know, that wasn't really ideal for them because they were there to, in many ways, get away from that. You know, they tried counselling and medication and therapy and that type of thing, and they were kind of sick of talking about it. But they did recognise that it would be helpful to an audience for sure if an audience understood where they'd come from. And so I just said, look, you know, just choose one thing that you felt had a major impact on, you know, a decline in your mental health. So as you see in the film, they kind of really just talk about one specific incident. And look, there were, you know, they told me many other things. I just chose those particular things. I wouldn't say that, like, their breaking points were necessarily just as a result of one thing. There's probably a number of things that lead up to, you know, then one thing occurring and it all seems too difficult for them. But they just showed a lot of courage, really, in revealing themselves like they did. You know, I thought they were very, you know, really courageous, and it really has helped an audience understand what they were up against and what other people are up against when they have these serious mental health issues.
Yeah, we've both talked about the audience reaction. What was the impact on you when you were doing this documentary? Was there things that you learnt while you were doing this documentary, and did it impact you as well?
Look, it did. I mean, luckily for me, I haven't experienced that level of trauma that they talk about in the film. So I felt really fortunate, you know, people out there doing it a hell of a lot harder than I've ever done it. So I had a lot of empathy for them, particularly when they went into these institutions wanting to do the right thing, serve the community, serve their country. And as you see in the film, you know, 3 of the 4, their traumas were really suffered while they were in the military, serving the military. You know, they weren't combat-related experiences. They were very much about how they were treated while they were serving in the military. And I guess that was an eye-opener for me, you know. I hadn't heard about the levels of sexual assault in the military, which, you know, seem to be very high. There's good reason that the Royal Commission is on at the moment and has been hearing many of these types of stories. So that was a real eye-opener, and I just became really determined to, I guess, do the stories of these people and these horses justice. They were on really profound journeys of healing. And I wanted to really make sure that I did everything I could to respect that, you know.
Definitely. Now, this has been a bit of a weird journey for you as a filmmaker as well, because we've been planning this interview, I think, for nearly a couple of years now, because every time you went to bring the film out, COVID would hit again and we'd have lockdowns and things like that. How frustrating was that for you as a filmmaker, having this really important film sitting on the shelf and not being able to present it to the community?
Look, it was very frustrating. You know, I'm not the only filmmaker out there that would have been very frustrated during COVID, but it certainly, it impacted everything. You know, it impacted our ability for me to even sit in the same room as my editor and get the film cut together. You know, we got sort of interrupted doing that, and then when we had finally finished the film, the cinemas were, you know, continually shutting down, and so were film festivals. So, you know, there was a number of festivals we were due to premiere at, and then they cancelled because they couldn't open the cinemas to audiences. So, yeah, it was a bit of a journey getting the film out there. And because it does deal with, you know, the healing of people's mental health, I felt like it was a very timely thing to get out there, because people were really suffering with their mental health through COVID, and even after COVID, you know. So look, I'm glad I'm really pleased that it's finally out there and that people are able to see it on the big screen with an audience, because we very much shot it as cinematically as we could. You know, we wanted people to have the chance to experience this in a group.
Yep.
On the big screen.
And you've just had the film showing in cinemas around Australia on a sold-out tour. What was that like? And how did you feel that audiences received the film at those screenings?
Well, number one, it was a fantastic feeling to tour the film with the cast and crew. I mean, we did Q&A sessions after each of the capital city screenings. We sold out virtually every session, and the audience feedback at the Q&A was really really amazing. Most of the audiences stayed for the whole Q&A afterwards in every city. There was people very interested from a veteran first responder point of view, or from the horse welfare point of view, or even mental health points of view. So there was a lot of people very interested in what I guess some people would term like an alternative or a complementary type of therapy in terms of dealing with mental health issues. And I think there's just a lot of interest now out there about if you are suffering with mental health and you can't get the help you need through more traditional kind of methods, what else is available for you?
Yeah.
And so we had a lot of people just really didn't know much about Scott and the work he was doing, but certainly came away really impressed and keen to help him in many ways, which is really, really positive.
Definitely. Now, we mentioned before in the intro that the film is about to hit streaming platforms. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about where they will be able to see The Healing over the next few weeks?
Yeah, so look, the film will be available online as of next week on the Good Film website. So the search to do on the internet is good, GOOD.film, FILM /The Healing. And it's the same place people are able to book tickets for the cinema tour, and the film will be available there to rent or to buy. And there'll also be an option there where you can book a community screening for next year, of which we've got quite a few bookings. And also there's the potential of a regional cinema tour. We're getting a lot of interest from regional cinemas to screen it in areas where there's probably quite a lot of horse lovers. And also potentially a lot of veterans. So, so it's good.film /The Healing. That's the place to find the film online.
Awesome. And Nick, you're pretty prolific in the film and television industry. What other projects have you got going at the moment as well?
Well, look, I'm acting in a TV series at the moment as well, called Hotel Cocaine.
Yep.
And we're filming in the Dominican Republic. We've filmed 4 episodes, and I've got to go back there early January and complete the last 4. And it's a new show from a guy called Chris Brancato, who is he's the co-creator of the TV show Narcos.
Yep.
And he also created the TV show Godfather of Harlem with Forrest Whitaker. So yeah, we're midway through that, and I was fortunate in some ways that the SAG actors strike shut down production, so I was able to be back here for the whole release of The Healing. And now that the strike is over, we're headed back there. I think we start filming again on January 14, and we go through for a couple of months, and then I think that show will be out later next year. What else am I working on? I've got a couple of projects that I've been developing for years, one of which is a drama adaptation of The Healing, following the story of a woman, inspired by several of the veterans I met making the documentary, and a couple of other projects that are bubbling away. I've got plenty on.
Awesome. Well, mate, we can't wait to see those other projects come to life as well. But for now, what would you like to say to people who are about to sit down and watch The Healing online over the next couple of weeks?
Look, I would just say that hopefully you see something that is eye-opening and is moving. And if you do feel, if you do like the film, please help spread the word. The more people we have sharing word about the film on social media, or just calling or emailing their friends about it and that type of thing, the better. Because the program that the film focuses on is a very important one, and it's saving lives. So spread the word.